In the quiet calm of an American evening, just after dragging myself home from a day that felt like wrestling with the devil himself, morning had me sparring words with a driver, midday required a less than pleasant visit to the boss, and by the day's end, I found myself staying late. It was my sixth cup of tea that found me settling into the soft embrace of my living room chair by the window, watching the nightlife of our small town come alive. With Friday on the horizon, I felt a semblance of relaxation seep in, despite the insistent pull of wakefulness that kept me from my bed. The sixth cup was already counted. I settled down modestly near the window, watching the nightlife of our village. Tomorrow is Friday, we can relax a little. Moreover, there's no sleep in any eye, so I'll sit until I pull myself to the bed. Everything was peaceful, almost serene, lulling me slowly into drowsiness. I was about to give in to sleep's call when something, or rather someone, caught my eye. A figure in a wheelchair slowly making his way along the sidewalk. His presence piqued my curiosity, his serious demeanor and determined path in the soft lamplight drawing me in. As he moved towards the intersection near my house for reasons unknown, he stopped and gazed into the distance, a silent sentinel in the night. By the light of the streetlights, I could make out that it was an old man. Apparently, he was heading toward the intersection near my house. For what purpose, unknown, just stood on the curb and looked somewhere in the distance. What a strange old man, I thought to myself, and drifted off to sleep at last. The old wheelchair user just decided to take a little walk. Perhaps he lost his legs at that intersection, so he comes there for old memories. Again, why? Everyone has his own cockroaches in his head, so it's not in my interest to discuss anyone there. Besides, sleep is much more important than watching some old man. The next morning there was an accident at the intersection. Two cars hit nose to nose, failing to control themselves on the road. There were no survivors. Both went out through the windshields. Their faces were badly disfigured, badly scarred, as if chewed up. Parts of skin and flesh hanging down in layers. It was strange enough that it could hardly have happened on a shard of glass. The whole situation with the accident was strange to me. It looked as if it had been set up on purpose. At the same time, the accident happened at the place where an old man in a wheelchair was standing yesterday, which is probably a coincidence. On my way back from work that afternoon, I met the old man again. He wheeled past me with his head slightly lowered so that I couldn't see his face, obviously in a hurry. His feet were covered tightly with a fluffy plaid. I stood for a moment watching him, and as soon as the old man disappeared around the corner, I moved on. I don't know why, but I had a glimpse of something happening the next day. And indeed, they found the dead body of the school guard. He was lying near the gate, his face also turned into a bloody mess. The reason? He had slipped and his face had been nibbled off by the dogs that ran near the school. That's when I really started to think, what if that old man was the killer? It sounds illogical, because how could such a helpless grandfather, confined to a wheelchair, do such things? Unless, of course, he's human. Was I going to follow him? There was no special desire, just browsing the internet for information about accidents and murders in our village. Reading local forums and news sites, someone also noticed that grandfather in a wheelchair before the incidents. They built various theories that old man was a sorcerer, a reptiloid, and that Mother Death herself. It was quite funny to read all this, but it was true where he was coming from. A common detail, the face turned into a meat mush. Kind of reminded me of the Mothman mythos. Except the problem is that grandfather is real. Many people saw him, even witnessed those terrible events. Among the many posts found one who decided to follow that old man while still broadcasting live. It's quite curious to see a schoolboy trying to behave like a typical blogger who looks for various paranormal phenomena in abandoned places. And so it was here. The kid was just trying to get into the role, watching the strange grandfather, and so for practically an hour. In the chat began to write that the joke is too long, that the grandfather as a grandfather, it would be time to end the broadcast. But the kid did not give up. He decided, on a desperate step, to come closer to the old man, to try to talk to him. Slowly and quietly, the kid approached the old man. Once at arm's length, the little operator raised his voice. "I beg your pardon, may I—" The grandfather leisurely turned toward the filmmaker, except that the broadcast failed. At the very last moment, I noticed how unusual that old man's face looked. It was like the face of a withered mummy that was quite old, probably because of his age. That's usually what people in their 80s and 90s look like. But there was one detail that made him different from ordinary people. A heavy and dead look, as if the old man was much older, well over 100 years old, if not two. It was creepy in a way that gave me goosebumps all over my body. He seemed to look into his very soul, knowing that more than one pair of eyes was watching him. The thought flashed through my mind that the grandfather in the wheelchair might be visiting me too. You could say I disturbed his peace too. I don't believe in mysticism. Most likely that broadcast was actually a setup, but for some reason I was wary of that grandfather. At times, when I caught him on the street, I tried to take detours to avoid his eyes. Every day the number of tragic events was growing. Everyone literally freaked out. Rumors about the mysterious grandfather in a wheelchair became more and more. Someone even organized a hunt for him, but the success did not end. Grief hunters then found dead. Over time, few people dared to leave the walls of their home. Only the brave went out, still not believing in what was happening around my grandfather. I was one of the latter. I still hadn't realized that grandfather wasn't human. I didn't want to take it seriously. As long as it doesn't affect me personally, I'll go to work, to the store, and just for walks as usual. It would have gone on like that for a long time if it hadn't been my turn. On my way home from work, an old man blocked my way. He was staring at me intently, but due to the darkness of my eyes, I couldn't see him. I passed by, then the grandfather reached me again, blocking my path again. A shiver ran through me. Suddenly, I was curious to know who he really was. I plucked up courage and approached him carefully. "Good evening." My voice sounded not so confident, slightly trembling from fright. "Do you need something? And may I ask who you really are?" The old man looked at me with a heavy gaze. His lips stretched slightly in the semblance of a smile. He slowly lifted the plaid. A multitude of tentacles enveloped me, wrapping themselves around me tightly. The smile remained on the old man's face as I watched in horror as I was pulled into the darkness beneath his plaid. There was a chill and a strange odor, like sea breeze or cut grass. I was in a desperate situation, the tentacle gripping me tightly, preventing me from moving a finger. From beneath the plaid, a large mouth with many small, needle-like teeth appeared. This was the end of me.